Don't just aspire to make a living. Aspire to make a difference. Anything you want, good, you can have. So claim it. Work hard to get it. When you get it, reach back. Pull someone else up. Each one, teach one. Just because you're doing a lot more doesn't mean you're getting a lot more done. Don't confuse movement with progress.
Ways from home. We're unified in how we're going to approach each and every task. In our particular field of construction, we're a moving assembly line.
Project Overview. Nova Gas Transmission Limited, or NGTL, a wholly subsidiary of TransCanada Pipelines Limited, proposes to construct and operate new pipeline facilities in the North Montney area of British Columbia. The North Montney Mainline Project, or NMML, will be comprised of the Aitken Creek and Kata sections and includes approximately 206 kilometers of mainline pipe, associated metering facilities, valve sites, and compression facilities. The Aitken Creek section will consist of approximately 182 kilometers of 42-inch diameter pipeline. The south end will connect with the northern end of the existing Ground Birch mainline, also known as the Saturn section, located about 35 kilometers southwest of Fort St. John, BC. The north end of the Aitken Creek section will be about 100 kilometers northwest of Fort St. John. The overall design requirements for the North Montney Mainline project, both pipeline and facilities, are regulated by the National Energy Board, or NEB. Other provincial bodies and various federal agencies may also have authority in specific areas. The NEB stipulates that the pipeline design must be in accordance with the requirements for the Canadian Standards Association, aka the CSA Z662 oil and gas pipeline systems. The design pressure for the pipeline will be 9,930 kPa or 2,890 psi. Scope of work. Macro has taken on the role of prime contractor for the Aitken Creek Section Spread 2. We understand the requirements as a prime contractor and ensure that we have the trained personnel and safety management processes in place to support the construction activities. Aitken Creek Section Spread 2, the second of 3 construction spreads that comprise the Aitken Creek section of the North Montney Mainline, extending from KP 52 plus 064.7, which is the endpoint of Peace River HDD, to approximately KP 119 plus 426, which is the end of Halfway River HDD. Installation of approximately 67 kilometers of NPS 42-inch pipeline and related facilities. Shift work will be scheduled as 6 days on with 1 day of rest. Project location. The right-of-way for Spread 2 is located between kilometer 52 plus 064.7. It goes all the way to KP 119 plus 426, which is the endpoint of Halfway River DPI. Project contacts. Below is a list of key members from Macro and TransCanada. Goals and objectives. Zero injury, property damage, or damage to the environment. Provide and maintain a safe and healthy work environment for all workers on the worksite. Be proactive and take reasonable steps to reduce the potential for incidents and ensure work is conducted in accordance with all TCPL, contracted, and legislated health, safety, and environmental protection requirements. The importance of safety is to ensure all TCPL and Macro employees, contractors, subcontractors, and visitors involved in the North Montney Mainline project are successful in completing their daily assigned tasks and assisting in overall completion of the project with the common goal of zero injury and/or damage or property to the environment. Guiding principles. At Macro, as members of the petroleum industry, we have a responsibility to protect all workers engaged in its activities from personal injury and health hazards. To meet our responsibility, we will operate under the following guiding principles. Responsibility. The operating company, when acting as prime contractor, is responsible for coordination and general supervision of all activities at the worksite, including activities carried out by contractors, subcontractors, service companies, and suppliers. While all parties have a responsibility to promote worker safety, the operating company recognizes its leadership role in promoting worker health and safety on the basis that it has the greatest power to influence worksite situations. It is the responsibility of workers and employers to refuse to perform unsafe work practices. Priority. Activities will be conducted on the basis that safety of all personnel is of vital importance, whether those personnel are employed by an operating company, a contractor, a subcontractor, a service company, or a supplier. Recognition. The process of selecting contractors, subcontractors, service companies and suppliers, and the administration of contracts will include recognition and support of good safety performance. Support and recognition based on good safety performance will also be provided by all employers to their employees. Improvement. The operating company, in cooperation with service companies within the industry, will promote methods and practices that have potential for improving safety performance. Safety responsibilities. Macro is responsible for providing a safe and healthy working environment for all workers. Macro supervision will provide clear instructions to employees about the tasks which they are to perform and ensure that workers are sufficiently trained and skilled to safely complete that task. Macro holds its management, supervisors, employees, subcontractors all responsible for health and safety matters within the scope of its assigned or contracted work. A copy of this EH&S manual will be provided to each supervisor and available for review at every worksite. Each worker is responsible for the protection of themselves and others around them by performing work in a safe and timely manner. All employees will utilize all safety equipment which is required for the safe performance of the work. Macro will ensure competent personnel conduct daily inspections, formal and informal, of its work areas, operations, tools, and equipment. These inspections will be performed and documented at the start of each workday and as personnel, equipment, or scope of work changes. All workers and subcontractors are to be familiar and to adhere to the occupational health and safety regulations for the province that they are performing their work in. Company H&S policy. To fulfill this commitment, Macro will give health, safety, and environmental considerations equal status with other business objectives and integrate them into all aspects of work. Work actively to continuously improve health, safety, and environmental performance. Only start work after confirming that essential health, safety, environmental protection systems are in place, and willingly suspend activities if safety, health, or protection of environment would be compromised. Encourage personnel to be individually responsible for identifying and eliminating hazards, preventing injury to themselves and others, and preventing adverse environmental impacts. Provide personnel with sufficient training, education, awareness, resources, and systems. provide and maintain properly engineered facilities and equipment. Environmental performance, actively monitor, audit, and review to improve systems, processes, health, and safety. As a minimum, ensure regulatory compliance at all times. Ensure both supervision and management is held accountable for promoting a safe and healthy workplace and the protection of the environment within their areas of responsibility. Life-saving rules. The life-saving rules will be strictly enforced to ensure the safety of our employees, contractors, and stakeholders. Leaders are accountable for communicating, training, implementing, and reinforcing these rules to assure compliance and performance. Adherence to the life-saving rules and all safety policies, processes, and procedures is an obligation for all personnel. Anyone found knowingly violating a rule will be subject to disciplinary action up to and including termination of employment. Life-saving rules continued. 1. We will drive safely without distraction. Wear your seatbelt. While driving, do not use your phone and do not exceed the speed limits. Follow prescribed journey management plan. 2. We will use the appropriate personal protective equipment, or PPE. Identify and select required PPE before performing work. Maintain and inspect all PPE. Wear all required personal protective equipment when performing work. 3. We will conduct a per-job safety analysis, or JSA. Identify hazards associated with a job or task. Develop control measures for each hazard identified. All affected workers will review and sign the JSA. 4. We will work with a valid work permit when required. Determine what permit or permits are required for the work. Identify all site hazards and establish control measures to eliminate or mitigate hazards. 5. We will obtain authorization before entering a confined space. Identify and assess confined spaces prior to entry. Complete required training and understand the hazards and controls before entering a confined space. Ensure rescue services are in place prior to entering a confined space. 6. We will verify isolation before work begins. Identify and control all hazardous energy sources. Develop an energy isolation plan and communicate to all affected workers. Verify and confirm by test that machine or equipment cannot start, move, or become energized. 7. We will protect ourselves against a fall when working at heights. Confirm all fall mitigation measures are in place and communicated to all workers performing work at heights. Inspect all protective equipment prior to using scaffolding, ladders. Also, secure all tools and equipment while working at heights. 8. We will follow the prescribed lift plans and techniques. Identify a coordinator for all hoisting, lifting, winching, and towing operations. Inspect all lifting equipment prior to commencing lifting operation. Never hoist or lift loads directly overhead of personnel. 9. We will control excavations and ground disturbance. Identify, locate, and mark all underground facilities prior to excavating. Maintain minimum clearance between the equipment and underground facility. Do not contact any underground facility with mechanical excavation equipment. Inspect all excavations prior to personnel entering the excavation. Tickets and training. The tickets and training required for this project are as follows: CSTS, PCST, or PST. Macro site-specific orientation, ground disturbance level 2 if involved in ground disturbance activities, standard first aid, WMIS and TDG, bear awareness. Additional training: coding vendor application training, CP and CN rail training, traffic control, transportation of dangerous goods, aerial lift training. Safety meetings. Below is a schedule of each required safety meeting. All safety meetings are mandatory for all MSJV employees, contractors, subcontractors, visitors, and clients with no exceptions. Two-way open communication at these meetings is promoted and highly encouraged. Site rules. Incidents do not happen, they're caused. All employees have the obligation to refuse any work they deem unsafe. Attendance at daily and weekly safety meetings is mandatory. Under the influence or being in possession of alcohol or illicit drugs on company premises is prohibited. There is zero tolerance. Fighting, horseplay, harassment, and practical jokes are prohibited as well. Theft, vandalism, or any other abuse or misuse of company property is prohibited. All unsafe acts and conditions, including near misses, incidents, property damage, are to be reported to your project supervisor or macro safety personnel immediately. Appropriate personal protective equipment must be worn on the job by all personnel. All work must be carried out according to applicable safe work practices and safe job procedures and your supervisor's direction. Use tools that are in good repair with all guards and safety devices in place. All defective tools must be tagged out of service. Defective tools must be repaired by competent personnel. Site rules continued. Practice good housekeeping. Vehicle operation is in accordance with all applicable regulatory requirements, for example, the Highway Traffic Act and site-specific rules. High-vis clothing must be worn at all times while working around or near heavy equipment. Do not feed or interact with wildlife or livestock in the area. Do not exceed beyond the right-of-way. Absolutely no personnel or equipment authorized in the no-go zone. Obey all posted safety signage. All long hair must be tied back around any rotating equipment. Smoking is permitted in designated areas only. Cell phones are not permitted while operating any vehicle or equipment. PPE requirements. CSA approved Class 2 side impact hard hat. All macro employees must adorn a macro issued hard hat. No ball caps are allowed underneath. Supervision will be affixed with a white hard hat. Where required, outerwear must meet required standard for flame-resistant garments. Hoodies are not permitted on the project. CSA closer sealed safety glasses or prescription safety glasses with side shields. Double eye protection is required when buffing or grinding. CSA steel-toe boots with 6-inch minimum height. Gloves are mandatory and specific to hazards associated with tasks. Hearing protection for over 85 decibels or dual over 105. Class 2 high-vis vest, surveyor stripes are not acceptable. Additional job-specific PPE to be used as required. PPE maintenance. Workers are responsible for the maintenance of their PPE. Check for signs of wear and deterioration. PPE is clean and maintained to manufacturer specifications. Fire retardant outerwear shall be free of tears and holes. Safety glasses shall be light appropriate and free of scratches or damage that can affect your vision. CSA steel-toe boots to have adequate support and tread. Gloves will be selected based on task and will provide protection to the hazards of the task. Site-specific hazards. Driving conditions. Always travel 10 kilometers lower than the posted speed limits. Traffic. Leave early and carpool if necessary. Increasingly congested work area and shared work areas. Traveling through populated areas. Buried lines, underground tanks and riser locations. Mobile equipment operating and moving, such as a side boom, excavator, bobcat, forklift, etc. Ambient temperature changes such as seasonal conditions, bears and various wildlife throughout the area. A PJHA will be done prior to work starting and will be reviewed with all workers. As work progresses, people, operations, or scope change the PJHA, which will be updated and communicated. Hand tools. Remove defective tools from work area. Guards must not be removed from tools. Electric tools must be ground and double insulated. If using generator to power electric tools, the generator must be rated for outdoor use and have functioning GFI. Whip checks and pins are required on all compressed air hoses. Deadman switches must be operational. Trigger locks must be disengaged, and you must inspect all tools prior to use. Fatigue. Macro and its workers have a shared responsibility to avoid fatigue related to performance impairment. Macro will ensure that all managers, dispatchers, and frontline supervisors are aware of the schedule predetermined and approved upon by TransCanada Pipeline, so that workers will have the adequate breaks and days off to ensure the opportunity to recover. Fatigue can be defined as a loss of alertness, which eventually ends in sleep. This loss of alertness is accompanied by poor judgment, slower reactions to events, and decreased skill, such as in vehicle control. It affects the efficiency, effectiveness, and safety of employees' performance in carrying out the day-to-day tasks. All workers have a duty of care and responsibility to ensure adequate sleep is obtained between off hours and days off, that after work hour activities do not cause fatigue or impair performance. When this is not the case, workers have a further responsibility to report the matter to their supervisor, manager, or dispatch. At no time should a worker put themselves or others at risk. Research that tested a fatigued state from continuous hours of wakefulness against blood alcohol levels concluded that 17 hours awake is equivalent to a blood alcohol content of 0.05. 21 hours awake is equivalent to a blood alcohol content of 0.08, which is the legal limit in Canada. 24 to 25 hours awake is equivalent to a blood alcohol of 0.10. Wildlife sightings. All wildlife sightings must be reported using the Wildlife Sighting Information Card. Sightings include caribou and other animals located within the vicinity. Be sure to include name, date, location, and description of the sighting. Any additional comments can be added to the comments section of the card. Please review the following wildlife matrix, followed by some bear awareness steps to ensure worker safety. Bear awareness. Black bears are found in heavily wooded areas and bush. Their habitat often overlaps with grizzly bears. Black bears are thick-set with a black coat. They have small eyes and a tapered Roman nose. Black bears have short claws that are not retractable. They may have a white patch below the throat. Coat color may vary. Other colors include brown, dark brown, cinnamon, and blonde. The Kermode, or spirit bear, has a white coat. The blue glacier bear carries a bluish-gray coat. However, both are rare. It is impossible to predict bear behavior in event of an encounter, so it's worth putting in effort to avoid wildlife encounters in the first place. This is why planning before beginning work is so important. Avoiding habituation and food conditioning. Habituation occurs when wildlife loses avoidance and escape responses, essentially when animals get used to human presence. This is a result of frequent, harmless interactions with humans. Attraction can lead to habituation. Controlling food and garbage. Controlling food and garbage on site will minimize human impact and help avoid habituation. Black bears have excellent hearing and a keen sense of smell. If startled, a bear might stand on its hind legs to try to identify a new odor. It might also run to get downwind. Black bears are solitary, but the bond between mother and cubs is extremely strong. Mothers are very protective of cubs. Although they are mainly vegetarian, feeding on berries, fruit, and nuts, black bears will eat almost anything, including insects, fish, and sometimes small mammals or young ungulates. Bears drink frequently and are often found at sources of fresh water throughout the year. In the wilderness, black bears are active from dawn to dusk. Closer to human settlements, bears are often nocturnal to avoid contact. Note: black bears are fast. They can run up to 55 kilometers per hour and climb very well. Black bears often climb trees if they feel threatened. Do not climb a tree to get away from a bear. It is certainly a faster climber than you are.
One of the important things with bear spray is you got to have it immediately available. If the spray is somewhere on your pack that you can't get to it, or it's stuck in your pack, it doesn't do you any good. You have to have your bear spray immediately available. I carry mine in the outside of my pack, as you see here. This is how I'm normally set up when I'm elk hunting or deer hunting. I even carry it this way when I'm bird hunting in certain places in Montana where we know we have grizzlies. So that's the key. Make sure the bear spray is accessible and immediately available. So let's talk about how we actually deploy bear spray. It's really a pretty simple process, and I'm going to do it relatively slowly here to show you how I would do it. First thing you do is grab the safety tab, pull that off, and don't grab the can like this. Instead, put your finger directly into the top of the can, pull the can out, and now grab it with two hands, because there's a little kickback that comes with it. Put your thumb immediately to the front, pull straight back, and now you're ready to spray. All you have to do is push down on the button. Now when you spray, what you want to spray is in a 1 to 2 second pattern, a Z pattern, where you spray like this, at the bear and down. If you spray right at the bear, the spray is coming out in a straight line, it could actually run under it. So you're spraying in that Z pattern, spraying at the bear and down to the ground, creating a wall that the bear essentially runs into. So now we'll do that again, but we'll do it in real time. Some of the common mistakes with bear spray is that people spray far too early. You know, the bear spray is going to go about 30 feet at a maximum range. So you don't want to spray when that bear is 100 yards away. It's not going to do you any good. Bear has to be within that 30 feet or closer range to actually hit it. Now it doesn't hurt to spray when it's getting close to 30 feet and you're laying down that defensive wall. And what you don't want to do is just spray the whole can the first time. Because then not only do you not have the chance to hit the bear if it's moved, but you also don't have any left for the hike out in case you encounter another bear. So one of the common questions and or problems that people perceive is that bear spray can't be used in the wind. But you know, the practicality is that it comes out with such force that it overcomes most wind events. So the spray itself is actually going to spray into the wind a significant distance. Some of it might spray back on the user, but you think about that. It's much better to have that discomfort from having the bear spray come back on you than suffering the injuries that take a lot longer to heal from when you're actually attacked by the bear. You know, so I guess kind of in closing, what I want to throw out there is that carrying bear spray while you're hunting, hiking, or recreating in the outdoors is a great idea not only to protect yourself, but to protect bears and future generations of wildlife so we can all enjoy it and we can enjoy it safely.
Emergency response process. All contact numbers, site and local, are posted throughout the supervisor's trailer in the main macro industries yard. And each vehicle with phone and or radio capabilities with partnered First Nations mobile medic units. All workers will be issued an ERP on site and it will be reviewed, with revisions being communicated and new ERPs issued as the scope changes. Roles and responsibilities in the event of an emergency are captured within the ERP. Stationary muster points will be identified with signage. Non-stationary muster points must be stated on both tailgate and FLRA documents. If any emergency does occur on site, work will stop as project supervision directive and will remain stopped until authorized to return to duties. In the event of an incident, 1. Protect yourself. 2. Sound the alarm. Tell the foreman or inspector. 3. Cell phone or two-way radio, your location, what happened, number of injured, and stay in contact. 4. Evacuate, up or across wind to nearest road crossing. 5. Verify head count, administer first aid. 6. Follow direction of first aid attendant upon arrival. 7. Secure the scene. Do not disturb the scene of an accident, except to attend to persons injured or killed, to prevent further injury, or to protect property. In the event of an emergency, timing of communication is critical. Macro has developed emergency response communication flowcharts to ensure efficient reporting to the required personnel. These flowcharts, which can be found within both the Emergency Response Plan, ERP, and Site-Specific Safety Plan, clearly define the chain of command of who to contact in the event of an incident. Field Level Risk Assessment. All worker crews are to complete an FLRA prior to work, task, activities starting. FLRAs are to be updated throughout the day or as tasks or new workers are introduced. FLRAs are mandatory and must be handed in at the end of each shift. Please follow along with your safety coordinator and learn how to fill out a FLRA. Hazard identification. Macro uses a hazard ID and observation card to report hazards, near misses, and unsafe acts, practices, and/or observations. These cards are also used to identify positive behaviors on site. An incentive program has been established to promote participation and help create a proactive safety culture. These cards, when filled out, may remain anonymous. Permits. Certain permits are required when completing work activities, such as general work in hot and cold conditions, X-rays, confined space, hydrovac, and ground disturbance. Macro has a safe work permit system that will be in place for the duration of this project. Permits will be issued via macro supervision. All permits are cancelled during any emergency and must be reissued. Please note, permit must be in place prior to any work commencing. Non-compliance, violence, and harassment. 1. Verbal warning. Discuss violation, correct at-risk behavior or behaviors with written documentation on the worker non-compliance report. 2. Written warning. Same as above, review verbal warning corrective actions, copy reviewed with macro management representative. 3. Termination. This action is applied when steps 1 and 2 were not adhered to. Violence and harassment. Macro has zero tolerance for violence, harassment, or discrimination of any kind. Policies are posted in the lunchroom and job trailers for referencing. For serious EH&S violations, employees will be immediately terminated from this project. Drug and alcohol policy. Macro prohibits the following: possession, use, or sale of illicit drugs or alcohol on job site and camp facilities. Being unfit for work due to the use of drugs and or alcohol. Being unfit for work due to the misuse of over-the-counter or prescription medication. Additional misuse of medication on job sites or in camp is forbidden. Employees and subcontractors reporting for work are expected to be sober, well-rested, and fit for duty. All workers will be subject to post-incident and reasonable cause testing while working on an MSJV site. Any workers who refuse the test or fail the test will be terminated from the project immediately. All workers must review Macro's drug and alcohol policy. Drug and alcohol declaration. The use of controlled or illegal substances while on or off duty impairs the efficiency of employees, undermines company confidence in them, and makes it difficult for other employees who do not abuse alcohol or illicit drugs to perform their jobs effectively. Additionally, substance abuse while on or off duty by employees poses a serious health and safety threat to the other employees and members of the public. Employees and subcontractors reporting for work are expected to be sober, well-rested, and fit for duty. It is the worker's obligation when under the influence of alcohol or drugs, including prescription or over-the-counter medication, to advise their supervisor accordingly upon reporting for work or when contacted to work on an emergency or unscheduled basis. If perceived by a supervisor to be under the influence of alcohol or drugs, the worker will be immediately removed from the workplace and evaluated by the supervisor. If unfit for duty, the worker's condition will be noted and will result in disciplinary action. Off-duty consumption of alcohol and drugs that adversely affects a worker's job, performance, or which could jeopardize the safety of other workers, MSJV's, customers, the public, or company property is proper cause for disciplinary action, including termination of employment. Social media policy. Macro understands that the technology and accessibility to social media is ever present with the use of handheld smartphones and other electronics. Macro has areas of concern with regards to sharing and uploading of this project related materials such as project photos, incident investigation photos, and safety-sensitive work areas. To this end, Macro will monitor and enforce a strict no use of any electronic transmitting devices during the course of work, unless approved so by project supervision or management. Furthermore, Macro will enforce the corporate non-disclosure policy strictly, under which the use and distribution of pictures, videos, and social media, unless approved by senior management, is strictly prohibited. Failure to adhere to this restriction may and can be grounds for immediate termination of employment. Inspections. Macro has a well-established and mature process for the inspections portion of our EH&S program. This process involves all levels of employees on all projects. Macro's health and safety management program, policies and procedures have been developed, implemented, and audited as per the Certificate of Recognition requirements. In-house training for frontline supervisors, management, and trade workers on how to conduct inspections and the process on how to identify hazards, deal with non-conformance issues, and correct any immediate or dangerous situations found throughout the work areas. Daily observations are conducted by safety personnel, field supervisors on all work areas, and findings are communicated at the next daily tailgate meetings or the weekly meetings. During these inspections and observations, a coach and mentor approach is used to inform new workers or workers that are not in compliance with the site requirements or provincial regulations. The use of a positive reinforcement process is introduced where the worker or workers are shown the correct and safe way to conduct the task as per the use of our safe work practices or safe job procedures. Vehicle inspections are to be completed daily and handed in weekly. Equipment inspections are to be completed pre-use. Picker inspections are also to be completed pre-use. Welding rigs, initial inspection completed by macro rep on site. Mechanic trucks, initial inspection completed by MSJV rep on site. Environment overview. Challenging environments include steep terrain, river crossings, sensitive species, archaeological sites, etc. Unprecedented regulatory and public scrutiny of the oil and gas industry, specifically pipelines. Environmental challenges. Key environmental constraints. Watercourse crossings, least risk biological windows, timing constraints, sensitive species, archaeological sites, and potential contaminated sites. Planning, and more planning. Anticipate what lies ahead. Pre-planning and communication are the key to timely and efficient construction. Environmental challenges continued. Watercourse crossings. Fish-bearing watercourse crossings, river crossings, open cut, punch bores, and HDD, and other key crossings. Challenges: isolation of large fish-bearing watercourses and potential for blasting. Mitigation: construction within least risk window. Fish salvage and water quality monitoring. Environmental management. Owner environment management team. Collectively responsible for environmental management and compliance. There will be a chief environmental inspector. Construction management and inspection team, also known as the CMI team. Interface between the owner and contractor for environmental management, compliance, monitoring, and reporting. Environmental inspectors and resource specialists. Contractor Environment Management Team, or CEMT. Contractor Environment Management Team consists of environment manager, aquatic lead, environmental coordinators, fisheries and water quality monitoring crews as needed, MSJV laborers to provide environmental support as directed by CECs, will ensure operations are conducted in compliance with approved environmental protection plans, will work collaboratively with TCPL environment team and inspectors, spread-specific environmental training will be provided to all workers. If you have any concerns or questions, please talk with the CECs. Environmental continued. In addition to specific plan requirements, the following minimum practices must always be followed. Spills must be reported and cleaned up accordingly. 100% reporting is necessary regardless of quantity. Vehicles and equipment must be equipped with a spill kit. If any archaeological artifacts are encountered, work must stop. There is no refueling within 100 meters of any creek or body of water. Soil handling to coincide with all EPP practices. All debris and all garbage is to be disposed of in yard bins. It is everyone's responsibility to ensure the environment is protected. Store and use hazardous products safely. Dispose of waste products according to instructions and in proper bins or containment areas. Report all spills and other environmental incidents to your supervisor. Environmental summary. Compliance with all environmental regulations, conditions, and commitments. Efficient and cost-effective solutions to environmental issues. Planning, and more planning. Anticipate what lays ahead. Integrated and cooperative effort with owner, CMI, and contractor teams. Anticipate strong regulatory oversight and need to demonstrate that we walk the walk. Chemical handling and storage. Chemical handling and storage on the North Montney Mainline project will be in compliance with all macro procedures, SJP 002, client specifications and expectations while adhering to OH&S regulations. All site personnel will have valid WMIS certification. Personnel will be educated on the location of safety data sheets for the controlled products used. Personnel will be educated on the location of first aid assistance as well as eye wash stations. Macro will ensure that no other worker is exposed to a substance that exceeds the ceiling limit, short-term exposure limit, or 8-hour TWA limit prescribed by ACGIH. If a worker is or may be exposed to a hazardous substance, Macro will ensure that A walkthrough survey is conducted to assess the potential for overexposure, taking into account all routes of exposure, including inhalation, ingestion, and skin contact, and B, reassessment is conducted when there is a change in work conditions which may increase the exposure, such as change in production rate, process, or equipment. If the walkthrough survey reveals that a worker may be at risk of overexposure to an airborne contaminant, the employer must ensure that air sampling is conducted to assess the potential for overexposure. If worker is exposed to a chemical or biological substance which could cause an adverse health effect, the employer must ensure that the identity of the substance and possible effects on the worker health and safety and any precautions required for the health and safety of the worker are clearly indicated by labels, MSDS, placards, signs, tags, or other similar means. Incident and injury prevention. All incidents must be reported to macro supervision or site safety representative immediately or when safe to do so. Incidents to be reported are as follows: property damage, incident near miss, vehicle collision and/or damage, injuries, potential hazards, environmental incidents. All personnel are responsible, including contractors, subcontractors, to follow all above set reporting standards as per the prime contractor macro reporting protocol. Reporting an incident on the next shift or the next business day is unacceptable and may result in disciplinary action. Never allow a work-related incident or accident, no matter how insignificant, to go unreported. Workplace incidents or accidents are investigated to provide information to management and workers in how to prevent future occurrences. All injured workers who are unable to perform their pre-injured duties will participate in the Macro Modified Work Program. Incidents are usually caused by the following: unsafe acts, most difficult to address, changing behavior isn't easy. Unsafe conditions, these are the easiest to prevent and easiest to correct. Prevention measures, safety audits, safety inspections, and maintenance of schedules. Any medical treatment and/or medication is covered by WCB in full. Medication costs will be reimbursed once the claim has been accepted and the original receipts have been submitted. If a worker experiences lost time from work due to doctor's appointments, WCB will reimburse those hours. Incident reporting. All incidents must be reported immediately to project supervision. Macro strives to provide comprehensive end-to-end incident management. To achieve this, Macro utilizes the Resolver Perspective Incident Reporting and Management Program. This program allows for prompt reporting from a field level to all required parties. Supervisors shall be well versed in reporting protocol for Macro, Trans-Canada, as well as both federal and provincial regulating bodies. Flowcharts for reporting and incident procedures are located within the Project Emergency Response Plan. Modified Work Policy. Macro is committed to providing a safe workplace for our employees and subcontractors. Preventing work-related illness and injury is our first priority. Workers are to be advised that Macro provides modified work opportunities in the event that one suffers a workplace injury. Our modified work policy and program provides opportunities for an employee who is injured on the job to return to work at full pre-injury duty. The modified work program allows the worker to perform his or her regular job with modifications or, when available, to perform alternate temporary work that is customized to suit the injured worker's specific recovery needs. The plan takes into consideration the worker's capabilities and limitations and reflects the recommendations set out by the worker's doctor. New or young workers. An employee is considered a new worker until the safety performance-based competency sign-off record has been completed and signed off by the new worker, the new worker's foreman, and the new worker's assigned mentor, or the employee has been with MSJV for 3 consecutive months. All new workers will be identified daily on the field level risk assessment to ensure they have the adequate mentor and coach assigned and are being identified to the rest of the crew. Driving. During various stages of the North Montney Mainline project, project personnel will be required to mobilize multiple sites utilizing 3 major highways. 1. The Alaska Highway. 2. Highway 29. And 3. Highway 97. drivers will be required to use additional care when undertaking travel on these roadways. Driver awareness. Every vehicle over 1 ton shall be equipped with a backup alarm and must utilize one or more of the following when backing up: spotter, single horn, backup camera. Whenever possible, drivers should utilize pull-through parking. Driving Part 2. There is zero tolerance for speeding. Light-duty vehicles under 3/4 ton must have buggy whips. Vehicle operations is in accordance with all applicable regulatory requirements. Only authorized personnel are to operate vehicles. Pre-use inspections must be completed prior to operation. Right-of-way speed limits 15 kilometers an hour when passing workers and vehicles unless otherwise posted. There is absolutely no riding on equipment or in the truck boxes. Operate the motor vehicle using safe defensive driving practices. Adjust driving behaviors appropriately to road and environmental conditions. This could result in the need to significantly reduce the speed of the vehicle. Wear seatbelts whenever the vehicle is in motion. Ensure housekeeping of unit is kept to standard. All vehicles require a 20-pound ABC extinguisher with a 10-pound minimum for pickups and SUVs not carrying refueling tanks. Two-way radios will be used for radio-controlled roads. The back-end policy is in effect. Perform a circle check before entering any motor vehicle to identify and assess potential hazards associated with vehicle condition, contents, and surroundings. Ensure that the motor vehicle contains the required safety and emergency equipment applicable to the terrain or route planned. For example, appropriate winter driving accessories. WorkSafe BC has a list of suggested items when winter driving. Separate all cargo from the passenger area and/or secure loads to prevent movement. Know the size, shape, and weight. Understand that the use of all communication devices, cell phones, pagers, text messaging systems, hands-free systems, etc., are prohibited while driving. Do not read text messages or handheld electronic devices while driving. Do not wear earphones while driving. Passengers must minimize the potential for distraction of the driver while the vehicle is in motion. Adjust the speed of motor vehicles to a minimum of 10 kilometers an hour below the posted speed limit under the following circumstances: when driving at night or during dusk and dawn periods, when driving in conditions of poor visibility such as dust, rain, fog, or snow. Drive to the road conditions, not to the speed limit. In areas where wildlife movements are known to exist. Understand that the use of cruise control is prohibited when using any macro vehicles or driving throughout the project limits under the following circumstances: when driving on roads with uncontrolled access, country roads, secondary streets, etc. When there is potential to encounter slippery road conditions such as rain, ice, and snow. When temperatures are at or below freezing, 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit. When reduced visibility conditions exist. When in known wildlife crossing areas and areas with potential for wildlife. When traffic congestion may require an immediate reduction in speed. When traveling on unfamiliar roads where the driver is unaware of potential hazards. Vehicle Use Agreement. Macro has a responsibility to its employees by providing vehicles and equipment that are maintained and in good working order. It is the responsibility of each employee to operate their assigned vehicle within the limits of all federal and provincial law and adhere to all Macro's policies and procedures. All drivers must agree to operate any assigned company vehicle within all federal, provincial, and municipal laws, as well as adhere to all Macro policies and procedures. An authorization chart must be signed off by Macro management prior to be giving an assignment of a vehicle. The level of authorization given must be strictly adhered to, and in not doing so may result in the suspension or loss of driving privileges. In certain cases, possible termination as per the Macro non-compliance policy. Driver Situational Awareness. 1. The driver situational awareness practice is applicable to all operations and major project employees, contractors, as well as lease or rental vehicles. 2. Prior to backing up, the driver will tap on their horn, which is not required if the vehicle is equipped with a backup beeper. 3. Once the vehicle is parked, the driver must place an orange cone at the right rear corner of the vehicle or trailer. This gives the driver the opportunity to survey and observe the area for possible hazards. 4. Prior to re-entering the vehicle, the driver shall retrieve the cone while performing their 360 walk-around. 5. Prior to driving away, create a mental image of how to safely exit the parking area and into traffic flow. 6. If a trailer is attached to the vehicle, the cone shall be placed at the back passenger side of the trailer. 7. Prior to backing a vehicle and/or trailer up inside a Trans-Canada facility away from the designated traffic path, the driver must place an orange cone at the spot which they intend to back into. This requirement will not be required if a spotter is being used. 8. Cones shall be present overnight while the vehicle is parked. Pre-qualification and competency assessments. Competency programs are as follows. Powered mobile equipment. PME operators are assessed using our PME Operator Competency Assessment. Our program is based on knowledge, experience, and ability, both through theory and practical demonstrations of their ability. From there, the operators are based on levels of 1, lowest, 2, and 3, highest. This way, we can track and maintain the competencies of both green operators and experienced mentors. A designated assessor for the North Montney Mainline project will be assigned. ATV and UTV competency evaluation. ATV, UTV competency evaluation are done based on the review of the SWP 054, the inspection overview of machine, and completion of the competency assessment checklist that is completed with each individual operator by a competent supervisor. Excavation and safe trenching. Excavation and evaluations are done based on the need for a competent person to deem ditch entry safe for work activities. ATV safety. All ATV and UTV operators must be familiar with the operating manual for the machine. Must complete a safe operations training course. Before use, conduct pre-use inspection and FLRA. Make sure you wear minimum PPE as per manufacturer's instructions, a full-face helmet with face shield or goggles, gloves, long-sleeve shirt, and pants. UTVs must be equipped with approved ROPs. Operators must wear seatbelt at all times. No operation on public roads or highways. ATV and UTVs operated on slopes greater than 5% must use the following procedures. Travel parallel to the fall line, no cross slope. Park on level ground and set park brake. Plan travel so that ATV and UTV can be maneuvered on as level ground as possible. Mobile equipment and lifting. Our company uses a variety of equipment and each one comes with its own hazards. As a worker, it is your responsibility to recognize the dangers around these pieces of equipment and how to control them. No worker or vehicle can enter the 6-meter danger zone without ensuring the equipment operator has acknowledged their presence and has indicated it is safe. Do not walk around or work under a suspended load. Spotters must be affixed with high visible striping or high vis vest at all times. The danger zone is defined as any location within 6 meters of a piece of heavy equipment. Prior to operating PMEs, operators and supervisors must complete operator competency assessments. This verifies that the operator has been trained in accordance with Part 16 of the BC OH&S regulations in the operation of the powered mobile equipment and has demonstrated knowledge and competencies indicated within the document in relation to the equipment. Spotter required for high loads entering MSJV's prime contractor area when in proximity of any and all power lines. All slings must be affixed with certified inspection tags. Remember to ensure capacity ratings are within the load requirements. Operators must utilize spotters when vision is obscured. Operators must stay at the controls of the PME at all times when handling suspended loads. At no time should any operator be permitted to be in the cab of a PME being serviced. All PME shall have the operators available to them. All PME will be equipped with a fully stocked spill kit. Seatbelts are mandatory and must be worn during the operation of the PME. 3 points of contact must be maintained while entering, exiting, or climbing ladders and designated points of access on equipment. Keys are to be removed and equipment locked when daily work activities are completed. Lifting capacity charts will be readily available. Lifting points will be inspected prior to each lift with an engineering certificated date within the last 12 months. Lifting or hoisting devices and all eyes and hooks on excavators must be certified annually. When lowering in, no worker shall be between the pipe and ditch or pipe and boom. PME blind spots. Please review the next few slides and photos to see what an operator sees compared to what you see from the ground. Refueling. No refueling within 100 meters of any creek or body of water. All fuel trucks, heavy equipment, and crew trucks with slip tanks must have a spill kit and adequate suppression equipment readily available. There is no smoking within 25 meters of any refueling. Report all spills to your immediate supervisor. No cell phone usage while refueling. Do not leave fuel hose unattended or rig up to self-pour at any time. Excavations. Personnel working with excavations must successfully complete the MS excavation training prior to undertaking any excavations. Upon completion, employees will receive a certificate as well as a sticker to help clearly identify competent personnel for assessments required. Excavation forms will be kept at the open excavation for other workers requiring ditch entry to be aware of ditch conditions and if it is safe to do so. Ditch conditions will be checked and signed off periodically or upon requirement to do so to verify safe entry. Proper access and egress into open excavations will be in place. For example, dirt stairs and/or tied-off ladders at either end of the excavation and at various locations within the excavation to ensure easy access and egress in and out of excavation, meeting and/or exceeding the OH&S requirements and Trans-Canada's excavation rules. Steep slopes. The project manager and/or site superintendent will ensure that the steep slope hazard assessment has been completed and other required engineering inputs are in place prior to work commencing. The site superintendent ensures that the hazard assessment, including the emergency response plan and permit, has been reviewed with all workers and that they understand the hazards and the responsibilities associated with the scope of work. Safe work practice and job procedure. The superintendent, in consultation with the foreman and operators, will make a site decision to determine if additional engineering inputs or support is required to facilitate safe performance of the work if conditions have changed from the development of the hazard assessment. All changes will be documented and workers made aware. Under no circumstances should operator dismount machinery while working on a steep slope. As an attachment to this procedure, WorkSafe BC Engineering Update 9501 outlines additional information that may assist in the development of steep slope hazard assessment. Power lines. Safe limits of approach must be adhered to as stated in the provincial OH&S regulations. Appropriate signage and goalposts are conspicuously placed to indicate clearances where and when applicable. Fire hazards and preventative measures. Hazards include welding, smoking and cigarette butts, flammable liquids, combustible materials, poor maintenance on equipment, coating materials. Preventative measures. Supervisor needs to correct all fire hazards brought to their attention. All fire suppression equipment shall be inspected and readily available. Have all firefighting equipment which has been used or appears to be defective recharged or replaced and put back into service immediately. Ensure designated smoking areas are clearly identified. Ensure all storage and handling of flammable combustible liquids meets all applicable provincial regulation requirements. Fire extinguishers. Inspected monthly with both annual and monthly tags attached. Limited use. Only about 20 to 25 seconds in a 20-pound extinguisher. Aim at the base of the fire with a small sweeping motion. If attacking a fire, sound the alarm. Ensure an escape route and continue only if safe to do so. In case of fire, rescue, alarm, confine, extinguish, and evacuate. To use the fire extinguisher, pull pin, aim hose, squeeze handle, sweep from side to side. Buried facilities. Client, federal, and provincial regulations and commitments must be met. All mechanical equipment is prohibited within 1.5 meters of any underground facility as per TCPL's ground disturbance specification and as stated on the ground disturbance permit. Once buried facilities properly exposed, a snow fence and associated signage stating open excavation will be put in place to identify the exposed excavation. X-ray. All X-ray work activities must have a permit prior to any work commencing. TCPL inspection must be notified and provide approval. The mobile unit has flashing amber lights on when X-rays are being performed. Flagging and signage posted and all work areas informed of time and location of X-ray. X-ray technicians will monitor work area to ensure no access and no exposure. lockout and tagout. All energy sources, for example, equipment, pressurized and electrical systems, must be brought to a state of zero energy. All personnel shall adhere to the guidelines outlined in the Macro Safe Job Procedure SJP 009. Every worker involved in the isolation will be required to have a lock. Workers will be responsible for the removal of the lock upon completion. Supervision must complete all required documentation, checklists, lockout form, etc. Survey color codes. With your safety coordinator, please review the following chart identifying the various color codes for survey stakes found on site. Sharing the right-of-way. Soraris Murphy, Bannister, and various other contractors will be working in close proximity to Macro throughout the duration of the project on either end of the construction build. Maintain understanding and communication with other contractor workers, especially when in close proximity to their working location and routes. Notify project supervision of any changes in work scope that may lead to an interference with their job tasks. Project security. All access to the site will have no unauthorized personnel, and all personnel must check in with Macro office safety signs posted. All access to the sites will be fenced off, closed, and monitored at the end of every workday. Gates and snow fence or barricades will be opened with locks removed at the beginning of each workday by Macro designated personnel only. Additionally, all gates will be locked at the end of each workday by authorized personnel only. Off-site hour security will be implemented in partnership with local First Nations. All bell holes will be snow fenced and open ditch signs will be posted. Site or areas of site will be illuminated during non-work hours as required. Site alarms, emergency, will be in the form of air horns strategically placed on site. Firearms are not permitted on site and there is no exceptions. Any unusual activity at or near construction site must be reported immediately. Everyone entering the site is required to check in and out with the safety personnel. Current social and political climates across the country has created the potential for protesters in the areas of major oil and gas projects. The following points are to assist all parties involved in the project and in the event of on-site protesters. Here's a protester interaction guide. Do's. Maintain some distance. Be prepared to defend yourself. Provide directives, such as, "This behavior is not appropriate and will not be tolerated." Immediately notify project management. Don'ts. Do not touch or grab the person. Do not threaten charges. Avoid extreme hand gestures. And do not get physically involved. Communication with the media. Any and all communication with the press or news media on the project shall be conducted by or through the TCPL Media Relations Group. If inquiries by the media are made, they should be directed to the TransCanada Media Line or 403-920-7859. All communications must be clear and unambiguous. Engage TCPL Media Relations as required. If approached by a member of the public with general inquiries into specific work being conducted, workers are permitted to discuss within their area of expertise their immediate tasks. Inquiries from the public into work as part of the general project must be referred to the project website as seen below. Site visitors. All visitors at Macro work sites are required to adhere to the following. All visitors or contractors and employees at Macro construction sites are required to report to the construction office and complete the Macro site-specific safety orientation. Follow all instruction received during an orientation. Visitors must be accompanied by a Macro representative at all times while on site. Visitors must follow the instructions provided at the site-specific visitor safety orientation and must review any job safety analysis that Macro has put in place respecting any specific activity the visitor may be involved with. Safety resources. Federal and BC OHS Regulations Hand Guide, EHS Manual, MSDS, Safe Work Practices and Procedures, WorkSafe BC OHS Regulation Mobile App. All safety resources can be located on site. Please ask the site safety or superintendent for copies. Applicable SWP and procedures will be available at the safety office. Worker rights. Each worker on site has the right to refuse. It is every employee's right and obligation to refuse work if they feel unsafe. If there is imminent danger to you or anyone else, just say no. Right to know. Each employee has the right to know of any perceived hazards and their corresponding controls. Right to participate. Each employee has the right to participate in activities and decisions that affect the health and safety of the workplace. Conclusion. Your supervisor is responsible to ensure you receive further job-specific training and information that will alert you to the job and area-specific hazards. If in doubt, ask. Obey rules, signs, and instructions. They are for your protection. You are responsible for your own safety and the safety of others. Watch out for each other. Safety requires teamwork.
At TransCanada, we're committed to protecting the environment, not just because we have to, but because we want to. As one of North America's leading energy infrastructure companies, our projects traverse large and varied environmental landscapes. We respect the diversity of the landscapes in which we operate and always consider the environmental and cultural aspects of our business activities. We strive to minimize our environmental footprint while fulfilling our obligation to meet the continent's growing demand for reliable energy. For every project we undertake, our environment strategy goes beyond simply complying with all applicable environmental laws and regulations. We strive for excellence in environmental stewardship, protection, and performance at every level of the organization. It's about doing what's right. TransCanada is committed to building projects in a safe and environmentally responsible manner, and we strive to be an industry leader in health, safety, and environmental practices. TransCanada builds projects in a wide range of landscapes and under a variety of conditions, from the warmest to the coldest climates. We work to develop and maintain good relationships with landowners and spend significant time listening to and consulting with our government regulators. Considerable time is spent planning, designing, and permitting a project, and we select routes and construction methods that will minimize environmental impacts while protecting the safety of the public and those working on the project. We know that building a safe and environmentally responsible project takes more than just planning. It takes the active participation and commitment of every individual on the project to effectively implement the appropriate plans and demonstrate our commitment to environmental protection. This video provides an overview of our environmental commitments, practices, and expectations that apply to all workers on TransCanada projects. We believe TransCanada projects can be built without environmental incidents. The project team implements effective environmental management systems to help us achieve this goal. All construction personnel working on the project are required to review and implement the Environmental Protection Plan, be aware of the site-specific environmental mitigation measures, and implement the necessary controls. All contractors working on TransCanada projects follow strict guidelines to minimize disturbance and impacts. TransCanada has a long-standing commitment to protecting the environment where we work and live. We believe that when we build a pipeline, we temporarily borrow the land. We design, plan, and build for long-term safety and reliability. We ask everyone working on the project to be respectful of all lands crossed by the pipeline and to take great care in conserving the environment for future generations. As someone working on TransCanada projects, you will need to follow these basic environmental rules. Stay within approved work areas and use approved access routes. Approved project work areas are clearly marked with flagging. Be aware that some areas of the right-of-way will be narrowed to protect sensitive environmental features, such as rare plants, wetlands, or watercourse crossings. Keep all your work within the flag limits. It is also important to use only approved, marked access routes and park within the work area limits. Approved access will be as indicated on maps provided in the contractor's access management plans. The construction contractor will place appropriate signage to identify unapproved access routes. This includes temporary signage along the right-of-way to stop access during closures due to adverse weather. If signs are missing or you are unsure about access, ask your supervisor. Stay out of exclusion areas. Exclusion areas are marked with flagging, signs, rope, or fencing. These areas contain sensitive resources, such as archaeological sites or rare species, and must not be disturbed for any reason. Unauthorized entry into exclusion areas can result in severe consequences by the environmental regulator for both the project and individuals. Minimize disturbance to wetlands and water bodies. The pipeline route may cross wetlands and water bodies, and these areas are all regulated by government law. Following project requirements is essential for protecting these sensitive resources. Protecting and maintaining the ecosystem function of watercourse crossings and wetlands is something TransCanada takes very seriously. Specific construction practices are implemented to protect these valuable resources. Take special care to keep all sediment, fuels, oils, and hazardous materials out of wetlands and water bodies. Do not refuel, conduct equipment maintenance, or cleaning within 100 meters of these areas. Report all incidents related to water bodies to the environmental inspector on site. Install erosion and sediment control measures to protect wetlands and water bodies from runoff. Use temporary bridges or mats to cross wetlands and water bodies, and keep all bridges clean. Use filter bags, silt fence, geotextiles, or sediment barriers when dewatering the trench to keep muddy water out of wetlands and water bodies. Talk with an environmental inspector if you have questions about a good dewatering location or setup. These issues should also be discussed at the daily Toolbox meeting. Soil management and conservation is of utmost importance to TransCanada. Sound construction practices aim to avoid or minimize impacts to soil resources and ensure the soil integrity is maintained. It is important to manage soil so that surface drainage patterns, land use, and wildlife habitat are maintained. Our regulatory conditions also require that we comply with industry standard practices and other specific landowner commitments. Once vegetation is removed from project work areas, the disturbed soil can be easily eroded by wind and water. Install silt fence, water bars, and other erosion and sediment control devices to prevent soil loss and keep sediment out of wetlands and water bodies. Install erosion control measures correctly and maintain them daily. Do not mix topsoil with subsoil. Landscapes we cross range from highly productive agricultural lands, sensitive native prairie ecosystems, and densely forested areas. To maintain the value of the land, it is essential to conserve all topsoil resources through topsoil salvaging, safe storage, and careful replacement. Do not use topsoil for padding the pipe. When the soil is naturally saturated with water, mats can be used to minimize rutting and soil compaction. However, cease all soil handling operations in high winds or very wet conditions, or in any other conditions that could lead to topsoil degradation or loss. Ensure equipment is clean and free of debris. All equipment that arrives on the project must be clean and free of soil, vegetation, and debris to prevent the spread of weeds and other plant diseases. TransCanada often commits to follow-up equipment cleaning at specific locations. The locations will be properly signed to ensure our commitments are met. To prevent the spread of weeds and to maintain productivity of the land, follow your supervisor's instructions on soil handling and equipment cleaning. Clean up and report hazardous material spills. Proper handling and storage of petroleum products and hazardous materials is essential for protecting your health and the environment. Follow the manufacturer's instructions and take care to avoid spills. Each crew must carry spill response equipment. If a spill occurs, stop your work and take immediate action to contain and clean up the spill, if it is safe to do so, and report the spill to your supervisor and TransCanada's construction management team immediately. Respect landowners and their property. TransCanada expects all workers to be respectful to landowners and the community while building the pipeline. Maintain good housekeeping and pick up any litter by the end of the day. Be sure to keep gates closed. Minimize dust by applying water and driving slowly on the right-of-way and access roads. Observe posted speed limits and drive courteously on local roads. And if a landowner approaches you with a question, refer them to TransCanada's Project Land Agent. If you are working away from home, remember you are a guest in the local community and treat that community and its residents with respect and courtesy. Maintaining genuine and consistent relationships with our landowners is of paramount importance in order to acquire and maintain permission to operate. Do not disturb wildlife. Construction will occur in areas that provide habitat for various plants and animals, some of which are protected by government laws. Designated locations will be identified by a wildlife or plant specialist, and signage will be placed in designated areas. Where necessary, fencing will be erected to minimize potential for encountering protected plant and animal species. TransCanada and the contractor will make you aware of species of management concern that are present within the project area. Report sightings of nests or protected species to the environmental inspector. Do not pick up, harm, harass, or feed animals, including fish, birds, and snakes. Notify an environmental inspector if you see a trapped or injured animal in the work area. Don't try to help the animal yourself. Local authorities will be contacted to assist the animal if required. Protect historical, archaeological, and paleontological resources. Construction may uncover buried remains of prehistoric and historic cultures, such as bones, pottery, stone tools, foundations, fire pits, or other artifacts. These materials may have historic, religious, or cultural significance and are protected by law. If you uncover these resources during your work, do not pick them up or disturb them. Stop work at that location immediately and contact your supervisor or an environmental inspector. An exclusion area on either side of the site will be set up to prevent further disturbance to the area. No additional construction activity or traffic can access the area until the environmental inspector and construction management team authorize construction activities to resume in these locations. It is not just the construction of the pipeline that has environmental requirements. The construction of facilities, including pump stations, tank facilities, and valve sites, also have specific environmental requirements. Certain components of facility construction, such as waste management, stormwater management, erosion controls, spills, hydrovac slurry management, and general housekeeping, have a heightened environmental sensitivity. Consult project environmental documentation and the designated environmental inspector to identify specific facility-related environmental requirements. TransCanada is committed to managing greenhouse gas emissions produced during construction activities. Operation of construction equipment, vehicles, and burning of woody debris are the main sources of greenhouse gases that can be produced during construction. Project environmental documentation will identify any required mitigative measures to effectively manage greenhouse gas emissions. If you have questions about your environmental responsibilities, stop and ask your supervisor or inquire with one of TransCanada's construction management team before you act. The environmental inspectors, construction team, and contractors will work together to identify and prevent problems before they occur. However, environmental inspectors have the authority and the obligation to stop any activity that identifies unexpected resources, threatens environmental resources, or is not in compliance with the environmental requirements. Report all incidents to the construction manager and environmental inspector. We have a duty and an obligation to record incidents, report them to the correct authorities, and implement measures to prevent further incidents. If we fail to follow the environmental requirements, it may result in costly fines, project shutdowns or delays, and even prosecution by regulatory authorities. We also want to maintain good relationships in the communities where we operate. To keep the project rolling smoothly, follow the basic environmental rules in this video and all site-specific training provided by project safety and environmental personnel. Remember to stay in approved work areas and use approved access roads. Stay out of exclusion areas. Minimize disturbance to wetlands and water bodies. Install erosion controls and maintain them daily. Do not mix topsoil with subsoil. Ensure equipment is clean and free of debris. Clean up and report hazardous material spills. Be respectful of landowners and their property. Do not disturb wildlife. Protect historical, archaeological, and paleontological resources. Be aware environmental commitments apply to facility construction. Implement required measures to manage greenhouse gas emissions. Refer to the project alignment sheets and environmental protection plans, and ask your supervisor or the environmental inspector if you have questions. Remember, it's about doing what's right. Our goal is to build the Trans-Canada projects in a safe and timely manner, and in full compliance with all environmental requirements. We ask everyone working on the project to be proactive, take immediate action, and initiate the appropriate procedures to prevent impacts to the environment. Together, we can meet our suppliers' needs while meeting our environmental commitments.
Welcome to the 2018 Environmental Orientation for the North Montney Mainline Project, specifically the Aitken Creek section. Trans-Canada's engagement with Aboriginal peoples is also guided by its policy. Our Aboriginal Relations Policy is as follows. Cultivate relationships based on trust and respect. Respect legal and constitutional rights. Respect diversity of Aboriginal cultures. Recognize importance of land. Work with communities to identify impact and find mutually acceptable solutions and benefits. Strive to create long and short-term opportunities. Support learning opportunities and build capacity. Acknowledge Trans-Canada's relationship with communities is distinct from that of governments. Everyone who works for Trans-Canada has a responsibility to help build and maintain relationships with Aboriginal communities we do business with. This applies to all company employees, business units, and contractors. The following is a map and description of the construction plans for the North Montney Mainline project. There will be 182 kilometers of NPS 42-inch pipeline designed to transport sweet natural gas from Saturn MS to Aitken Creek East MS. Spread 1 will be KP0 to KP52, which is northwest of the Peace River crossing. Spread 2 will be KP52 to KP119.4, which is the halfway river crossing. And spread 3 will be KP 119.4 to KP 181.6. Environmental performance. It's your responsibility. Trans-Canada, and by extension, NGTL, has made regulatory, stakeholder, and corporate commitments. You have made a commitment to work with Trans-Canada and NGTL in line with our environmental strategy. Poor site audits by regulators could result in project delays and/or compromise regulatory requirements. Everyone must have an environmental orientation sticker. Follow the contractor's project-specific environmental plan. Know your role in the Environmental Protection Plan, also known as the EPP. There is regular communication between the contractor's superintendents and Trans-Canada's construction manager and the environmental inspector. Things you need to know. Know where right-of-way boundaries are. Boundaries will be staked, flagged, or fenced. Know how access roads and shoe flies are identified, staked, flagged, signed. Know how environmental features are identified, clearly marked and signed, advising you that you are entering environmentally sensitive areas. Know how bridges and ramps over protective sites are identified, including unnamed drainages that will be marked and have temporary crossing structures installed. Know where approved parking and staging areas are located. If you don't know, ask your supervisor, ask an NGTL environmental inspector, or ask a member of the Construction Contractors Environment Team. Environmental Protection Plan, EPP. The EPP and Environmental Alignment Sheets, EAS, identify project-specific environmentally sensitive resources and locations, environmental protection measures and commitments that must be adhered to by everyone during the project lifecycle. Copies of the EPP are available in the NGTL Environmental Inspector and Construction Manager on-site offices. Copies are also available in the construction contractor's on-site offices. If you have any questions, always ask the environmental inspector. EPP continued. Follow the EPP at all times. Compliance commitments, regulatory requirements, stakeholder commitments, standard environmental mitigation measures for all construction phases, additional project-specific mitigation measures, management and contingency plans. Environmental Alignment Sheets, also referred to as EAS. The rows above this map identify the resource, wildlife, soils, etc. The rows below the maps have codes defining site-specific protection and mitigation measures. There will be a legend on the back of EAS which will define all codes. Wildlife mitigation measures. Do not harass or feed wildlife or livestock. Do not collect or remove wildlife and wildlife byproducts from the project footprint. Do not engage in hunting, fishing, trapping, or gathering within the boundaries of the project during construction. Do not possess or store firearms, bows, and crossbows, or any fishing equipment in the project work areas or work vehicles. Do dispose of food waste in designated containers or as discussed in daily tailgate meetings. Ensure lids are secured on waste containers. Report listed or sensitive species to the environmental inspector. Where beaver dam removal is required, mitigations outlined in the EPP Appendix 1J must be followed. Please report all wildlife sightings, including amphibians and fish, to the environmental inspectors. Environmental Sensitivities, Spread 1. Watercourse and wetland crossings on this project are as follows. There will be 2 HDD crossings known as Pine River and Peace River, 11 isolated open cut crossings, and 32 wetland crossings. Mitigation measures for active bear dens, western toad, and fisher have been established. Additional mitigation commitments are as follows. The Peace Moberly Tract, PMT, Pine River Dunes Area, the Septimus 04 Lower Moberly Old Growth Management Areas, or the OGMA. Please watch for signage and flagging along the right-of-way so you know if you're entering or near any sensitive features. See the map below for a description of the PMT. Peace Moberly Tract, PMT. Area of Critical Community Interest to the West Moberly First Nations, or the WMFN, and Saulteaux First Nations, SFN. NGTL committed to conducting ditching and pipe installation in frozen conditions. EPP and Peace Moberly Tract Protection Plan, WMFN and SFN construction site visits. Expect increased inspections by regulators, NEB, FLNRO, OGC. Weeds. A dry cleaning station, shovel and sweep, or compressed air will be located near KP 38 to ensure equipment is clean before entering the PMT. Watch for signage and ensure your equipment meets any requirements before entering the PMT. Watch for signage and flagging along the right-of-way so you know if you're entering or near any sensitive features. Environmental Sensitivities, Spread 2. Watercourse and wetland crossings on Spread 2 are as follows. There will be 2 HDD crossings, Farrell Creek and Halfway River, 20 isolated open cut crossings, and 45 wetland crossings. Reclamation for BC Hydro Parcel, northwest slope of the Peace River at KP 57, as per geotechnical engineering specifications in design drawing. The Graham Caribou Range is from KP 84 to 93. Species at risk are all federally protected. Restricted activity period from January 15th to July 15th. Report all caribou sightings to the environmental inspector. There are 9 archaeological sites that require mitigation. Example, avoidance, surveillance by archaeologists during construction. Watch for signage and flagging along the right-of-way so you know if you are entering or near any sensitive features. Environmental Sensitivities, Spread 3. Watercourse and wetland crossings for Spread 3 are as follows. There will be 18 isolated open cut crossings and 26 wetland crossings. Mitigation measures for wildlife, for example, active bear dens and western toad, have been established. 6 archaeological sites that require mitigation, for example, avoidance, surveillance by archaeologists during construction. Watch for signage and flagging along the right-of-way so you know if you are entering or near any sensitive features. Rare plants and ecological communities. Obey flagging and signage for rare plants and ecological communities of concern. Review mitigation for rare plants and ecological communities of concern in EPP Table 1 to ensure there is full understanding of the procedures involved. Report rare plants or rare ecological communities to the environmental inspector. See Plant Species and Ecological Communities of Concern Discovery Contingency Plan, EPP Appendix 1E. Weeds. All vehicles and equipment must arrive on-site clean and free of soil and vegetative debris. All mobile equipment will be inspected for cleanliness by the environmental inspector and identified with a sticker. Equipment that is not in an acceptable condition will not be allowed on the project site until it has been cleaned at an approved location. Shovel and sweep or compressed air will be applied where required to prevent the spread of weeds. Below are a list of weeds that you'll find on this project. Historic resources. Obey signs and/or temporary fencing. If historical or paleontological features, for example, arrowheads, modified bone, pottery fragments, or fossils, not previously identified are found on the right-of-way during construction, contact the environmental inspector and follow the steps in the Heritage Resource Discovery Contingency Plan, Appendix 1E of the EPP. Collection of any historical or archaeological resource is prohibited by project personnel. Follow any mitigations identified in the Table 4 in the EPP. Traditional Land Use, TLU sites. Obey signs and/or temporary fencing. Traditional uses include, but are not limited to, hunting, fishing, gathering, trapping, spiritual practices, camping, and community gathering. If traditional land use sites not previously identified are found on the right-of-way during construction, contact the environmental inspector and follow the steps outlined in the Traditional Land Use Sites Discovered Contingency Plan, Appendix 1E of the EPP. Culturally important vegetation. Game and pack trails, mineral licks, wildlife dens, and beaver dams. Follow mitigations identified in Table 1 of the EPP. Clearing and right-of-way preparation. Adhere to Crown license conditions, landowner line list, timber salvage plan, and EAS. Obey all marked boundaries on the right-of-way and environmental features. Clearing will be minimized near stream banks and in wetlands as per flagging and staking. Salvage and deck timber as per the timber salvage plan and cutting permit. Consult with the environmental inspector. Pine beetle infested logs will be decked and hauled following BC Forest District requirements. Woody debris and logs will be stored at specific locations for placement during final cleanup for access control, rollback, and line-of-sight barriers. Logs used for wetland crossings, or corduroy, will be removed when vehicle and equipment access is no longer required. Soils handling. Topsoil salvage is required on all agricultural lands. Topsoil will be stripped as recommended in the EPP Section 8.3 to depths shown in the EAS or until color change. Topsoil and subsoil must not be mixed and must be stockpiled in separate piles. Install erosion control measures to prevent loss or mixing of soils. See EPP Soil Erosion Contingency Plan, Appendix 1E. When wet soil conditions occur, implement EPP Wet Soil Contingency Plan, Appendix 1E. On final cleanup, replace topsoil to correct depths over stable subsoil contoured to natural drainage patterns. Do not mix soils. If in doubt, ask the environmental inspector or the soil specialist for requirements. Water management. Water withdrawal only from permitted locations as per permit conditions. Water trucks used for withdrawals must be clean and water intake screened. Permit condition. Anyone withdrawing water must record the withdrawal volume, location, and a log must be kept. Copies of permits or agreements must be in place at both the source and in the truck. If springs or groundwater are encountered, notify the environmental inspector. Ensure proper erosion and sediment control. Do not allow dirty water to leave the project footprint. Wetland crossings. Work in or near wetlands and water bodies must be completed as outlined in the EPP and EAS. Obey all signage and respect all riparian buffers as marked on the right-of-way. Minimize the removal of vegetation and wetlands to the extent possible. Do not use temporary workspace within the boundaries of a wetland unless required. You must be approved by the environmental inspector. Do not seed disturbed wetland areas. Please allow for natural recovery. Watercourse crossings. Obey signage and flagging at all watercourse crossings. Install and use approved pipeline and vehicle crossing structures over water bodies. See EPP Table 7A and Master Crossing List for crossing and timing details. Prevent water contamination, for example, sediment, oil, grease, garbage, etc., and maintain stream flow. If fish are observed in the work area, notify the environmental inspector. Water quality monitoring is required at all fish-bearing watercourses and where isolated methods are used. Fish salvages are required. No construction within fish-bearing streams until a fish salvage is completed and clearance is provided by the environmental inspector. Apply erosion and sediment control measures as soon as practical after vegetation clearing or soil disturbance at all watercourse crossings. Don't forget, fording of watercourses is not permitted. Drilling waste and hydrovac slurry management. Follow Hydrovac Slurry Handling Management Plan, EPP Appendix 1F. Where practical, drilling fluids and hydrovac slurry may be stored at temporary sump locations prior to final disposal. All hydrovac trucks are expected to arrive on site free of contamination. Disposal of drilling fluid will be monitored and recorded to comply with the BC OGC regulations. Drilling waste will be tested periodically to ensure it is free of contamination. Ensure equipment operating around sumps and slurry storage are clean and leak-free to reduce the potential for accidental contamination of the slurry. Contaminated soil and slurry will be stored and disposed of as required under the regulation. Disposal of contaminated soil and slurry is expensive and time-consuming. Prevention saves time and money. If an in-stream drilling fluid release is detective, refer to the Directional Drilling Procedures and In-Stream Drilling Mud Release Contingency Plan, EPP Appendix 1E. Environmental incidents. An environmental incident is defined as a release or leak on or off-site directly attributed to the project. Any activity that is not in compliance with environmental regulations, permits, company procedures, the EPP, and/or project environmental commitments. Any incident that results in or could result in an impact of fish, wildlife, or the environment. Identify and report. Identify and report all environmental incidents to the environmental inspector. Environmental inspector will assess conditions and required response. If you are unsure, just ask. Communicate. The environmental inspector will communicate issues to TransCanada's advisor and construction manager or designate. The environmental inspector will notify regulatory agencies if required. Control. Control measures may include general mitigation as per the EPP, implementation of contingency plans, temporary shutdown on site if required, and other variances or modifications. Spill control. Spills of any size must be cleaned up and reported to the site supervisor, who will immediately call the environmental inspector and/or the construction manager. Spill prevention, containment, and cleanup materials must be maintained on site, in vehicles, and on equipment to adequately respond to spills. In the event of a spill, follow the Spill Contingency Plan, EPP Appendix 1E, and complete a spill report. Ensure correct containment and storage of fuels and materials to prevent all spills. NGTL has the responsibility to spills to government agencies dependent on size, location, and type of material spilled. Avoid refueling and storing fuel, oil, or hazardous material within 100 meters of a watercourse or water body. Fuel and service vehicles and vehicles with slip tanks will carry hydrocarbon spill kits with a minimum of 10 kilograms of sorbent material. See EPP. Waste and hazardous material. All waste and construction debris must be collected, sorted, tracked, stored, and disposed of in an approved manner and/or at an approved facility. The Chemical and Waste Management Plan, EPP Appendix 1F, applies to the construction footprint, all staging areas, construction yards, and public roadways being used in association with the project. Burning of construction debris and garbage is not permitted. Brush and trees will be disposed of as directed by NGTL in compliance with landowner agreements and Crown License, MLTC, and cutting permit. Contractors must track waste and provide records to NGTL. Please maintain good housekeeping. Backfill, cleanup, and reclamation. On agricultural land, stripped subsoil surface will be smoothed to prevent admixing during topsoil replacement. Maximum crown over the trench is to be 10 centimeters. Excess spoil material will be spread evenly over the stripped area. Replace topsoil evenly across stripped area. Maintain natural drainage patterns. On forested land, all available spoil will be roached over the ditch line. Replace material uniformly across the stripped area. Install trench plugs and sub-drains. Remove all construction materials and debris including matting, geotextile, log corduroy, and flagging. Install appropriate erosion control measures. Replace all fences. Use a cover crop to assist in weed and erosion control where warranted or where indicated on the line lists and in the EPP. Specified area of Crown land will require revegetation, seeding, and/or plantings to meet OGC license conditions. Watercourse reclamation to be conducted as EPP drawings and applicable permits and the direction of the environmental inspector. Natural recovery will be used in wetlands on Crown lands. Seeding applications will be made on steep slopes and in specified areas. Fire hazard. Carry appropriate firefighting equipment in accordance with the BC Wildfire Act and regulations and the EPP. In the event of a fire or moderate to extreme fire hazard conditions, follow the measures outlined in the Fire Suppression Contingency Plan, EPP Appendix 1E. Locate burn piles on stripped portions of right-of-way. Do not locate burn piles on peat-rich areas. All burning will be completed in accordance with applicable regulations and approval conditions. Know who the fire boss is, and know your role in the event of a fire. Plans in the EPP. Contingency Plans, Appendix 1E. Release, adverse weather, flood and excessive flow, wet soils, fire suppression, soil handling, permafrost, soil erosion, contaminated soils, drilling mud release, plant species and ecological communities of concern, wildlife species of concern, heritage resource discovery, TLU sites discovery, management plans, Appendix 1F, chemical and waste, traffic control, hydrovac slurry handling, horizontal directional drilling, breeding bird and nest management plan, and access management. If ever uncertain, refer to the Environmental Protection Plan, Environmental Alignment Sheets, Project Specifications, Project Drawings, or the Landowner Line List. Or even better, stop work and ask your supervisor.
Don't just aspire to make a living. Aspire to make a difference. Anything you want, good, you can have. So claim it, Work hard to get it. When you get it, reach back. Pull someone else up. Each one, teach one. Just because you're doing a lot more doesn't mean you're getting a lot more done. Don't confuse movement with progress.